Andy Shacklady and an upcoming court case about extremist Muslims and corruption within the prison system. Now, I've been asked by one of Andy's family members to do this video. They've asked us, would I be able to do this video? And they have sent me a lot of information regarding this. Now, it's Andy Shacklady, but everyone in prison, and I think people on the outside, everyone knows him as Andy Shack. Now, Andy Shack has been in prison for 24 years. His minimum tariff, it was life with a minimum of 20 years, so he's 4 years over tariff. He has been recommended for release on 3 separate occasions, and obviously it didn't happen, and he's still inside of prison. Now he is in HMP Garth, which is a Category B prison. He was in HMP Lindholm, which was a Category C prison, for 6 years. And if you're in a Category C prison after 6 years, you come up on a parole hearing, you're getting recommended for release, the odds are you're going to get released, or at the worst, you're going to get Category D status, which for someone who's been in for 20 years is more than likely the outcome. You get a Category D. But what has happened for him to have that backwards move into a Category B prison? Now, this is what I'm going to be talking about. But a lot of you watching this now, because I have thousands and thousands of new subscribers, new followers, they'll be saying, please Ricky, can you let us know who Andy Shack is? Well, I met Andy Shack 20 years ago inside of HMP Franklin, and we were on separate wings. I was on F wing, he was on G wing. We used to see each other in the gym and have the odd bit chat, and that's how we knew each other, from inside the gym inside of HMP Franklin. But the lads across the high security estate all knew exactly who Andy Shack was. He was one of those fearsome, or had a fearsome reputation within the system and on the outside. I will tell you a little bit more in detail in a second what he was in for. But like I say, inside the high security estate, I've done videos on Andy previously when I was doing videos saying who was the hardest man in the Category A estate, or who were the hardest men. And I give a breakdown, and Andy Shack was one of them. He was an absolute formidable character, or a formidable force. He was someone that could handle himself, he could have a fucking fight. And like I've just said, people were, I was going to say, wary of him. They were wary of him because they knew he was a fucking handful and he could have a fight. And he was well known for that. But like I say, it's now 24 years later and he got recommended release. So I'm going to tell you for the viewers what he was in for. So Andy Shacklady from Skelmersdale, Lancashire, built up a drugs empire worth millions by importing Class A drugs from the Netherlands to supply gangs in Scotland and users in Lancashire. This is one of the articles I'm reading that was done at the time. Manchester Crown Court heard how Andy cultivated a violent reputation which he believed made him untouchable. So certain was he, no one would testify against him. He murdered rival Paul Fields in August 2002 in front of witnesses. Now, Paul Fields was a friend of his when I've read a few different things and obviously what I've heard over the years, and certain deals weren't going right. Deals were getting done behind each other's or people's backs, and this was the reason why he supposedly killed him. And he got jailed with a recommendation that he serve at least 20 years, and Mr. Justice Royce said some of those you had dealings with lived in fear of you. Fear was one of the tools of your trade. The judge said the sentence would serve as a warning to other dealers. Andy was once known, allegedly, by court documents, as a ruthless drugs baron and one of the most high-profile in the UK. And he was also convicted of possession of 1 million ecstasy tablets as well as heroin and cocaine and conspiracy to supply. So when I met Andy in 2006 inside of HMP Franklin, in 2007 when the tide started turning in the high security estate, a lot of the Muslim inmates and a lot of the big high profile inmates like Andy, they all used to get along with each other. There was never any animosity and it was quite peaceful, shall we say, in the high security estate. But things started changing when they started bringing terrorists into the situation or into the scenario. Then the dynamics of the prison system started to change. Because as you can imagine, Muslims that were convicted of terrorist offences against innocent members of the UK citizens were coming into the high security estate and mixing with the normal location prisoners. And then the Muslim inmates were taking them under their wings, and that is when the dynamics of the prison system started to change. Because as you can imagine, the terrorists coming in to a high security prison who was trying to kill innocent kids and any members of the public, people aren't going to take kindly to them. People on the outside don't take kindly to them. Especially, and more so, in a high security prison full of fucking violent men and murderers. Then you get a terrorist come walking on the wing as though they're in for a normal offence. Even though a lot of the offences and the murders weren't what you would class as normal. But terrorists, you would think, would be put on the VP wings for protection. The likes of Darren Barrett, who was the head of the Al-Qaeda in the UK, who was sentenced to life with a minimum of 40 years for plotting to blow the UK citizens up. Omar Khayyam, the dirty bomb terrorist, who was also in Franklin at the time. The Glasgow bombers, the terrorists who drove into Glasgow airport trying to kill the Scottish citizens. All of these were thrown inside of Franklin at one time, and then there was more coming into the system. But this is when the dynamics started to change, because in 2006, I said 2007, but thinking back, it was 2006, because that was the year I was moved to Franklin from HMP Durham. And the very next year I was there in the kitchen, because in Franklin you can cook your own, where all of the high security prisons, you can cook your own food. There's kitchens on the wings. At the time, you could buy litres of oil on your canteen. So I was in the kitchen getting a welcoming steak of a friend of mine inside of Franklin, who obviously, my second day in, get some of this food. So we're sitting, standing, making a steak. And we looks over, sees a pan of hot oil bubbling away. I've spoke about this on the HMP Franklin documentary Channel 5, which I was on. And I looked over and I thought, fucking something's not right here. A lad come in, went over, picked the pan of hot oil up straight over the back of Darren Barrett's head. The fucking skin and everything was just peeling off him. And that was the day the dynamics started to change, because after that, everyone was on tender hooks, and lads were walking around the wing like thinking, fuck, what's going to happen next? Because all of the Muslim lads all got together. I think there was around about 80 on the wing. There might have been around about maybe 15 to 20 Muslims, but the Muslim Brotherhood, if you attack one of them, the whole lot of them are coming for you. So all of them were together. So a lot of them that were in there at the time that got on with a lot of the lads, everyone got on with them. And some of them were big, naughty, muscly fuckers. And they were quite intimidating. So they did all get together, and there was a revenge attack a few weeks after that. I can't remember how long after it was, but it was about a few weeks after that, when Omar Khayyam come out of the kitchens with a pan of hot oil, tipped it over one of the Geordie lads' heads, scalded him, and that was because he felt in fear and he wanted to be off the wing, because, like I say at the time, the amount of white lads compared to the Muslim lads outnumbered them 4 to 1 or 3 to 1. if there was 20 and then it was 80, that works out like round about that. They were outnumbered, so they felt inferior, which you can imagine. But this is when the violence and the dynamics changed massively. Because on G-Wing, where Andy Shack was, a matter of weeks after this, same thing was happening over there. There was about 20 Muslims on there and about 60 non-Muslims, well, shall we say, because non-Muslims weren't just the white lads, it was black lads as well who weren't Muslims. So there was the same over there. There was about 60 non-Muslims, 20 Muslims. It all kicked off. There was a mini riot on that wing. People were getting fucking laid out left, right and centre, most of the Muslims. And obviously Andy Shack was there on that wing at the time. And he was in the altercation. I'm not sure exactly what happened to Andy because of that altercation, but what happened after that, everyone was getting dispersed. A lot of the lads that were in Franklin, the non-Muslims, were getting sent down to Lawton, Full Sutton, Whitemore, and down them prisons, that's where it was predominantly Muslims. It was only Franklin that they were the minority. The other prisons, the non-Muslims were the minority. So you can imagine the non-Muslims landing down there, they were getting fucking done right in. Especially the ones that were coming from Franklin, because they'd heard everything that had went on inside of Franklin. So this is the background of the case, this is the background of when the dynamics changed in the high security estate. Now getting back to Andy, like I say, I'm going to mention something as well about Andy, because someone had mentioned on a video, I'd seen a comment earlier on, they'd been looking through me all the videos, and it was actually that one, and they said, no way, you're talking shit, no way did anyone have a Rolex in prison. In the gym, it was the gym annex, because they had two gyms in Franklin. They had the main gym, and it was called the gym annex at the top. When I first met Andy in there, one of the lads that was on the wing with me, who I knew, he says, look at that, he's left his fucking watch on the windowsill, and he's walked out, and he says, Andy, he says, what's this watch worth for you? It's a gold Rolex. He says, 30 grand. He says, what the fuck you doing, just leaving it lying around? But that was the type of, shall we say, respect Andy had, and power as well. Because if it was just any normal Joe, it was someone with a 30 grand watch who didn't have the backup or the pull, didn't have the aura about them, it would have been took. That would just been took straight away, a 30 grand watch. But obviously Andy Shack has got that fucking fearsome reputation. People aren't going to go and pinch his fucking watch because the doors are locked. Your watch is missing. No one's getting out the fucking door till the watch is back. So another time in the gym, I seen Andy snap his arm from there. I've never seen a snap on an arm like that before. He was doing behind shoulder press on the Smith machine. He had the lad either side. I think he had about 140 on the bar, but it was the bars that you rack back on. The lads weren't taking notice, they didn't have the whole of it properly. So he's thought he's clipped it on and he's let go with that arm. That arm's still on. The fucking weights dropped to the floor, pulled his arm back. That was the noise I heard. I was standing over near the squat machine, heard a snap like that. I looked over, and he's like that. Oh, the machine, like I said, just dropped, pulled his arm back, snapped it clean and off from there. And because Andy was category A, high risk, it took them about 6 hours to get him to an outside hospital. It took the healthcare staff about an hour just to get up to the gym to see to him. Then they took him down the healthcare unit, and obviously he needed hospital treatment, but because he's category A, high risk, they needed helicopter support. It was 6 hours before he'd even left the prison to go to hospital. But getting back to the case now, Andy had spent 6 years, I think it was after all of this had happened. This is when obviously a lot of people were falling out with each other, obviously the Muslims and the non-Muslims and the extremists that were coming in. The extremists were using extreme violence, or they were getting other people to, and there was revenge attacks, and this is what was happening inside a prison. And again, the non-Muslims, the big naughty fucking gangsters, shall we say, that didn't give a fuck, were knocking Muslims out left, right and centre, and Andy was that type of character. He didn't give a fuck about the Muslims, and they didn't like it that he didn't give a fuck about them, so there was altercations throughout the years. And because Andy could stand up for himself and have a fucking fight, when he got put down the block, they would say, right, you're not going back on the wing. Even though when he's been put down the block, he had 3 nickings in 24 years. 3 nickings means he's been down in front of the governor, and it's more so classed as a charge inside a prison, but the prison slang is a nicking. So Andy's had 3 nickings in 24 years, which is fucking absolute minimal. So obviously them nickings must have been for fighting with the Muslims, and the Muslim Brotherhood obviously got together inside a prison, and the Screws knew what was coming. They knew that Andy's life could be in danger, but they also knew Andy didn't give a fuck and he would go on the wing and get stuck into them. So what do? They keep Andy down the block for his own protection, but he's not down there on protection. He's demanding to go back on the normal location wings, but they won't let him. So he's saying, well, how the fuck is that fair? Why are you keeping me down the block as a punishment? But they're saying they put him in the CSC, which is the Closed Supervision Centre, because of these altercations, and they kept him in there, like I've just said, for 6 years, passing him backwards and forwards to the different blocks in the high security estate. Obviously, they were receiving Osmond warnings. Over the years, he had 7 Osmond warnings. An Osmond warning is a threat to your life, where on the outside, the coppers, if there's a threat to your life, they've got to come to your house and issue a warning and tell you they've got information that you're at imminent threat of losing your life to an attack. So obviously inside a prison, it's the same. The Screws, the governor has come up and said, listen, you've got an Osmond warning on you. They're issuing an Osmond warning and saying there's a threat to your life. So they keep him down the block. And in 2017, he actually won a judicial review. He was in the blocks, and he was obviously getting his barrister to go to the Court of Appeals, right to the court, sorry, and he had a judicial review. The judge demanded that he be released back onto the normal location wings or put somewhere safer in a prison environment, obviously not with the VPs, but put on a normal location wing. That judge demanded you've got 14 days to fucking put this man in another prison or back on normal location wings. He won the judicial review, and that's when he obviously went on to the normal location wings, and he ended up back in 2020, I believe it was, or 2019. He ended up in HMP Lindholm, where he spent 6 years and recommended for release 3 times. But what happened inside of HMP Lindholm, I'll say your past comes back to haunt you, or more so, what happened in the high security estate comes back to haunt you. I'm saying haunt you because, and you'll be thinking, if you did ever get the chance to see this, you'll be thinking, wait, it's not coming back to fucking haunt us because I'm not asked about them. But what I mean is, it's come back to fucking haunt him and come back to bite him, because he's in a category C, ready for release, and there's Muslim inmates. HMP Lindholm is rife with Muslim inmates. Obviously the Muslims higher up to find out where Andy's at, they're waiting to get back at him, and I don't know whether or not the Muslims were the ones from inside the high security estate who Andy's had dealings with previously. Andy's went down to the gym and 2 of them have attacked him. Andy's retaliated, and like I've mentioned, Andy can have a right old fucking pagger, a right old fight. So Andy's levelled the fuck out of these two Muslims, knocked the fuck out of them, done them in. Then after that altercation, and it was another time when Andy was at the gym. He's come back from the gym and the security screws are in his pad, raiding his pad. Andy had been stitched up by the other inmates, which was later found out to be the Muslims, because the person that was seen on camera going inside of Andy's pad when he was at the gym, there was a phone call that he had made afterwards. Obviously phone calls are recorded inside of prison, and in the phone call he's heard to be saying, "I was stepping up for the brothers," and that was some of the evidence that's going to be used against that as well. He was heard saying, "I was stepping up," because on the phone call he was saying he'd done something, and they were saying, "Why have you done that?" And he said, "Because I was stepping up for the brothers." And he even went on to admit to it and say, yes, he'd done it for the Muslims, and he was setting Andy up for them. They find phones, weed, and a few other little bits of pieces. Andy is then nicked, put down the block, and because of the altercation in the gym, he was sent back to HMP Full Sutton. But in his file, it said, "Do not send to HMP Full Sutton because of the Osmond warnings." So what did they do? They sent him to HMP Full Sutton, where he spent 5 months in the block. Then when he's going to be doing judicial reviews and that again, they've said, right, get him out of here, and that's how he's ended up in Category B. So, and that was a bigger backwards move, going from a Category C to Category A high security prison. Imagine if he hadn't gotten onto it and saying, look in the fucking file, he's got 7 Osmond warnings and he's not allowed to go to Full Sutton prison. So they've sent him to Full Sutton. They've sent him to Full Sutton prison, and then when he's got there, they've put him straight in the block, because obviously Full Sutton are aware of what's happened. HMP Lindholm have just shafted him and thought, fuck it, put him in, fucking send him to Full Sutton. So Full Sutton have looked at him and said, fucking hell, Andy, what are you doing back here, lad? And put him in the block, because obviously they know exactly what would have happened. So it makes you think, why the fuck have they sent him there on purpose when it's in his file, there's Osmond warnings, and his life could be ended in Full Sutton. So they decide to send him there after he's had altercations with Muslims. Are they fucking backwards or not? And this is the reason why there's an upcoming case about this. This is getting took to court. Andy is taking this to court about the corruption and what has been happening to him over the years. Because like I say, he's 4 years over tariff. He should have been out if he was recommended release. He should have been out by now. If you're in a Category C, let us do the maths. 24 years over tariff, 6 years in Lindholm. If you've spent that many years inside of a Category C prison, and well before your tariff was due, then you would definitely be getting released or going to, well, probably a Category D prison. But like he says, if he's been recommended release, then there is a possibility they could do that. Even though I do believe he would have went to Category D. But either way, it would have been a good move. Not a backwards move to Category A high security prison. Another altercation was when the Glasgow bomber was in HMP Manchester, which is formerly known as Strangeways. Andy was in the CSC, the unit with Dale Cregan, and the Glasgow bomber was also there. He was in a part of the unit, I think, doing gym work or whatever, because they have gyms on the units, and he was attacked inside the gym. Andy was nowhere near the attack. Andy was in a separate part of the building, shut away, like behind the door, where he couldn't get anywhere near the Glasgow bomber when the attack has took place. But what do? Immediately they come and get Andy, put him in the block, and he's in the block for 2.5 years. But Dale Cregan is one of the witnesses that Andy is going to call up to be a witness for him in court to say what had actually happened on the day the Glasgow bomber was attacked. Andy had nothing to do with it. The Glasgow bomber even gave a statement saying, "I've known Andy from up in Franklin prison, and it wasn't Andy that attacked me, and Andy had nothing to do with the attack, but they still kept him in the block for 2.5 years. So this is the reason why Andy is getting this took to court and talking about the corruption. He's actually taken governors to this case to exploit them and show about the corruption, what has happened inside the system by keeping him in the block for all those years when he should never have been kept in the blocks whatsoever. Altercations have happened. Andy can have a pagger. The terrorists or the Muslims are saying they're going to do him. So if you're in that situation, that scenario, Muslims are putting threats out against Andy Shack. Andy obviously won't go on protection on the VP wings, so they're keeping him in the block against his will. He's saying he would go back on the normal location landings, but they're saying no, and they've kept him in the block against his will. That's why he won the judicial review. The judge was outraged and said, "Get this man out of the segregation units now. We've got 14 days. So what the fuck does that say to you? But I will leave that one there for now. Like I say, I've been asked if I could do this video. It was a couple of weeks ago when I was asked, but I've been waiting to get the right time to get this put together properly, so it wasn't just a quick 10-minute video where I'm talking about. I wanted to come on and do the straight fact and talk about what has been happening to Andy since his time in prison and getting kept in the blocks against his will. But I will keep you updated up on this upcoming court case and what will be happening, and see what actually happens at the case. I'll keep you updated, people, let you know what's going on. I do hope Andy gets a good move. When he gets moved, he's not going to get released from HMP Garth, which he probably will be having a little bit of hope, thinking he will, but he's not going to get released from a Category B prison as a lifer. Hopefully, he could get a good move to Category D. Hopefully, he gets some good news soon and he gets moved to Category D. And he does manage to get out and get on with his life and put all that shite behind him. But I'm going to leave that one there for now, people. Hopefully you are enjoying the content. And if you are, remember to comment, like and subscribe. Take care, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe.